What's good, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review Jay-Z's 2006 comeback album, Kingdom Come. So in 2003, Jay-Z basically retired with. In 2003, Jay-Z basically retired with the Black Album, which was pretty large. Jay-Z had a number of things going for him at the time. You know, his high-profile relationship with Beyonce. He had just found his protege who was blowing up at the time, Kanye West, who was getting ready to drop an album, and he also had a series of hit singles from the Black Album. So all that kind of happened around that time. He retired on a high point. He said he wanted to get out, but then Kanye West blew up around that time frame, and Jay-Z had delivered a series of kick-ass verses on rap albums like Bun B's album and folks like that. He was around in 2004 and 2005, but he came back in 2006, and this was his comeback album. And back in those days, that was kind of a long time to take off. Like nowadays, people talk about retiring, but the 3 years that there was a gap between the Black Album and Kingdom Come was kind of lengthy time to have not heard from Jay-Z in any studio format beyond features. That's kind of the situation, but it was, I look back on it, Jay-Z was kind of adequately trying to convey that he was not the same Jay-Z from like the Big Pimpin' or the Change Clothes days of a few years prior, where he kind of had more sophistication and more relaxed kind of mellowness to him, and was kind of, approaching middle age and such with that sort of context. I mean, he still had the spark in terms of the lyrics, but it was just, these are not necessarily like club songs like Usher's Yeah or something like that that just have like a lot more kind of this puppy love kind of mentality, and some of that type stuff is this kind of more sophistication and kind of more relaxation in a lot of ways. But this is a good album. Jay-Z himself has said that this is probably his least favorite album that he did, and it kind of got mediocre reviews. But I want to kind of bring back a new spotlight on this project because it's really not terrible. I mean, there's a lot of situations. I'm actually going to give this a pretty stellar score. I need to bring up Notepad real quick. Yeah, I mean, over two over 2/3 of this project are pretty kick-ass. I mean, that's just kind of the situation about it. Well, maybe not over 2/3, but a good chunk of this project's pretty kick-ass. You'd be surprised at the consolidation behind it. It just really works in a pretty extreme way, and like I don't feel like this is one of Jay-Z's worst. I mean, I'd probably say that would probably go to like some of his late 90s albums, like maybe the Volume 2 or Volume 3, because I feel like even though Volume 3 had like Big Pimpin' on it, it didn't really have a follow-up single as large as that. So I feel like the singles are great. I mean, Dr. Dre is on here, Kanye West produces a beat, the Neptunes produce a beat. So there's a good assortment of folks that are on here. Just Blaze is on here. So there's just some good stuff in terms of some of that context as far as what happens. I mean, I feel like, Jay-Z very much was still the NY rapper that he was in the early 2000s and 90s, but the sophistication and kind of more hotel kind of music, this more kind of like suaveness and kind of more practiced and kind of fine wine kind of personality actually works rather well. I mean, because there are still club tracks. Jay-Z very much still goes out, but it's just not quite as like the songs you're gonna hear like Laffy Taffy or like the Soul Survivor type stuff that Jeezy was doing. I mean, it's just that kind of context where it just has a different. The sleeves are not so much rolled up as much. I think that's just kind of the situation. But so we'll talk about the singles now. So the first single is "Show Me What You Got," and I kind of feel like this has a good sample. Don't really know it, but I've heard it before. But I do like this. Is a really kind of this is why I talk about the emphasis behind it. This is how it kind of has a more laid back kind of approach. Perfect kind of comeback single. I do feel like it has a good emphasis in what to do. Jay-Z was able to tear this song apart, but it's just not like a song I would play at like. I mean, it can be a club song, but it just has like, the concept of more grace is kind of something to be seen, or it's not so much like a dance club where women are going to twerk to this kind of song and that type of stuff. It's definitely not a TikTok song, definitely not like a YouTube short song for the most part. It just has like a certain kind of, or this is not for like, Instagram or more TikTok and YouTube shorts and that type of stuff, where it kind of has more. It is in the club, it can be, but it just is an age gap of a difference going from like the MySpace rap and the kind of more, like ringtone era type stuff compared to like the stuff where it's like, yeah, you're spending probably 3 digits worth of money on a night going out as opposed to just like $25. And that's just kind of the concept about it. But I do appreciate the way that it was. I do feel like it was pretty easy emphasis just listening to it. I do like getting more rounds of club cuts beyond just like thinking that every club song is just ringtone rap, because it isn't. I mean, Jay-Z proved it just with this song. The second single is Lost One, and this is produced by Dr. Dre. Really kind of mellow song, just talking about how Jay-Z's some of his failed, some of his not necessarily not all of them are romantic relationships, but just kind of uh, experiences he's had with folks that he's kind of had a falling out with and that type of stuff, just among things like Dame Dash. So it's just kind of like it's just a real easy going kind of song. I like the hook on here really good. I mean, it's just such a kind of bittersweet kind of song. It's not something I would play in an outgoing sense, but Jay-Z kind of, I feel like Jay-Z really nailed this kind of song well, because you can at least hear, I mean, this is a song you might hear at an airport or like some like food setting where you're like just getting lunch or brunch or something like that. It kind of just feels like a brunch song. It's a real kind of mellow where you would find people kind of in like morning commute and stuff, but not really like a club type song. So it's just interesting in that sense. Dr. Dre did a nice kind of melancholy kind of piano beat that kicked ass. 30 something is a club song. This is the third single. I did like this song. At first, I didn't like it when I first used to listen to this album. I didn't like it, but I do appreciate it more now. This is another one that kind of has that sophisticated, more graceful kind of club feel where, and this is even lazy. I mean, this is really not even a dance club song. This is just a club song that you hear when you're just smoking like a cigarette, something like that, just mingling a little bit, just kind of doing like maybe you have a drink in your hand, but you're just not really focused on like actually bouncing and that type of stuff. It's just kind of more, it's more in the social side of being out and about kind of thing. I think that's kind of the concept. Jay-Z kind of conveys that he's not really, he's evolved and he's stepped up and he's kind of reached a different point where he's not just doing like the ringtone music and the songs like Big Pimpin' anymore. That's kind of the concept, but it works. It's pretty kick-ass. And then fourth single, Hollywood, is with Beyonce, and she does a great job on here. Really kind of, Beyonce does a great job on her here. Her really kind of kick-ass kind of melodies that she had around the B-Day time. So it's basically B-Day era Beyonce. And this song reminds me of like, there was a song that like Jay-Z did off of the Blueprint 2. I think it was called like Poppin' Tags. Like it reminds me of that. It reminds me of like Excuse Me Miss and Poppin' Tags from the Blueprint 2. Both, I mean, Jay-Z's pretty good at doing like those R&B flavored songs. It's good that Beyonce was on there. I'm actually surprised that he didn't have a single with Pharrell this time, because really he had done that for a good while. He had a series of singles with Pharrell. I really felt like that was like the only thing missing. I mean, Pharrell is on here, but it's just, I mean, he teams up and he sings at the same time as Usher, so it's not as distinct. But yeah, Hollywood is real good. Reminds me of Poppin' Tags. It's kind of, if you like Poppin' Tags and Excuse Me Miss has the same type feel towards it, just an easygoing kind of, this is kind of another outgoing song, just kind of nice little stepping out kind of bop. This one's probably the most fast paced compared to all four of the singles, where this one actually has some energy to it. But yeah, so all four of the singles kick ass, and they can be listened to at different angles. But this album really has a lot going for it. I mean, really, the energy is kind of, if you're looking for something that kind of has like at least something to where you don't have to be over 35 to listen to it, I feel like songs like Trouble, Hollywood, Do You Want to Ride, Show Me What You Got in some cases, really, I mean, those about four songs. I mean, yeah, I mean, Jay-Z is really kind of laid back on this project. And that's just kind of the thing about it. It's just kind of more, or you're not going to get like the ferocious kind of, trying, stunting, flossing, I've got stuff to prove type mentality. But I do feel like the Dr. Dre produced song Trouble is probably the best beat on this whole album. I remember that song from back in the day, Easy. I mean, Dr. Dre really did a nice club beat. This is probably one of Dr. Dre's best beats from the late 2000s. I definitely feel like the synths on there, or whatever it is, he really tore it apart. And Jay-Z effectively did well. I mean, Jay-Z and Dr. Dre is a good combination. Needs to happen more. And like Do You Want to Ride is a real mellow kind of summer song. This kind of feels like you're on the beach and just kind of around water. I feel like John Legend really tore this hook apart. There are some great hooks on this album, just to kind of say that. There are some truly great hooks. Like, that's one thing that Jay-Z got out of every single one of these hooks that he got. He has a number of them. Beyonce does a hook, Usher and Pharrell do a hook, John Legend does a hook, Chrisette Michelle does a hook, Neo does, well, he doesn't do a hook, but Sterling Sims does a hook, and Chris Martin from Coldplay does a hook. So there are some pretty rock solid hooks on here. They all deliver. They all gave Jay-Z their A-list efforts. I mean, a lot of these probably could have been singles if Jay-Z had wanted them to be, but just understand this is a pretty hooky project. But the problem with it is, on a light note, just to say a bad thing, is the fact that the songs that don't have a hook artist on here kind of feel tacky, and they just don't feel quite as inspired. Like the title track Kingdom Come tries to do the Can't Touch This by MC Hammer and just does a terrible job with it. And songs like Oh My God and I Made It really just have such plotting production. I just feel like the sophistication and grace that Jay-Z had on like Trouble, Show Me What You Got, 30 something, and Beach Chair is just not there. I mean, for some reason, Jay-Z just really kind of struggled with album cuts that either didn't have a hook artist or a good production. And that's just kind of the concept. But there are some really outstanding ones. I'm going to talk about a few more of these. Like I said, Do You Want to Ride has an excellent, excellent hook from John Legend. Um, Trouble is a great beat. Beach Chair that was kind of a surprising combination, just because not too many folks collaborate with Chris Martin from Coldplay. I'm glad. I think Jay-Z and Chris Martin were good friends back in the day, and Beyonce and like Chris Martin's girlfriend, I forget her name, but Chris Martin's girlfriend were good friends, her and Beyonce. So that's kind of the concept there. So yeah, there's just a lot of good stuff to talk about. I mean, really, I don't understand when people say that this was a subpar project, because there was a lot of deliveries on here. I didn't really like Minority Report. I saw a lot of folks talk about how much they liked Minority Report in terms of like the critic reviews and other reviews, but to me it was just an extenuated verse, which with kind of a neo vocals tacked on to the end. Should have just been in a 3-verse format. Neo should have just done the hook, and Jay-Z should have just went in and did like a standard song talking about the problems, because it was just about like the way that society kind of was at the time. But I felt like the song formatting of how it worked was just kind of, that was a subpar rendition. But when Jay-Z kind of has like more kind of sophisticated club bops on here, which he does, I mean, he goes out, and Jay-Z is not someone who's just a hermit or a recluse or something like that. He steps out, but he does it with grace and class, and that's kind of the concept. It's just interesting kind of getting that, because you feel most people by the time they're 36, 37, they're kind of like, oh, I don't go out anymore and blah blah blah, I don't do this, and I stay at home and I just raise my kids. But the fact that Jay-Z didn't have kids back in 2006 says that he still was very much still an entertaining personality to be able to do it. But that's just kind of the interesting thing. There are some quite good moments for a more, like, I feel like Anything, Hollywood, Trouble, Dig a Hole. I forgot to talk about that song. That's a really good kind of, I mean, it's not quite as excellent a beat immediately as Trouble, but it does kind of have like a social vibe, kind of like Crack Music by Kanye West. Kind of like Crack Music by Kanye West. I kind of feel like Dig a Hole kind of has like that, where you'd hear it like in a promo place, a hotel, something like that, some place where there'd be people, maybe not a dance club song, but just a place where you'd be sharing drinks and socializing. It's just good to kind of gotten that. So that's kind of the situation there. But I just kind of feel like there's a lot of fun to be had with this project. It just kind of does it in a more kind of relaxed format. That's what you have to understand. So I'm going to give this album, I'm going to tell you the 9 songs out of 14 I recommend. So they are Trouble, Anything, Do You Want to Ride, Hollywood, Lost One, Beach Chair, Show Me What You Got, 30 something, and Dig a Hole. All of these really kind of kick ass in various ways, and I just kind of feel like that's the concept. So, me liking 9 out of 14, I want to say that that's the same thing that happened with the Lady Gaga album. So I'm going to give this album also a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like it's definitely above average, just the effectiveness of it. I almost want to give it an 8, just to kind of say, just because the effectiveness of these. I think I will give it an 8. I think I'm going to give Kingdom Come an 8 out of 10, just because the effectiveness of how many hits that there are on here, and the fact that all 4 of the singles were good. There were some excellent hooks, some good social moments. He wasn't a recluse on this project, and he had things to talk about, and he was lyrical. It kind of comes as like a hodgepodge of talent to be able to say that. Despite the fact that there were 5 songs out of 14 I didn't enjoy, I still feel like, the vast majority of this project is very overwhelmingly great. So that's kind of the concept. So it gets an 8 out of 10. And I will give the social score like an 8 also, just because it did have 4 singles. Not all of them charted real high. The best one was really Show Me What You Got. But I just feel like the concept about the Billboard Hot 100 at those times, the sophistication where people Jay-Z's age probably weren't as in tune with music as like folks like 20 years younger was, the MySpace era and the ringtone era and that type stuff, as far as that kind of went. So there just wasn't a lot of like more energetic kind of snap rap type stuff like Young Jock and D Pharrell and that type stuff that could have really made this album happen. But Jay-Z made this album chart without having like a snap rap kind of single that was popular around that time. So that's to be said, but it's just not very youthful. That's kind of the thing. So just understand that. But yeah, in terms of the future, Jay Z dropped an album recently with Beyonce. He did an album called The Carters, but it's been a little while since he's dropped. I think he'll probably eventually come back, but this is pretty solid, and he does have a lot of content out, so just understand some of that stuff. But this is definitely, Jay Z said that this was his worst album, but it definitely isn't, in my opinion.